PowerPoint up, Bill.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
So you need me to get the PowerPoint up, correct?
Yeah. That would be good. And I'll just let you click through it. So thank you everybody for joining us today. If you could go back to the first slide there, Bill. Just to that's number 3. So if we, yeah, thank you. It's a wonderful privilege to be able to speak to you. I am a big fan of Dr. Bill. I found him on YouTube and I've been absolutely blown away with Dr. Bill's lectures, his extreme amount of expertise and knowledge. So thank you, Bill, for all you put out into the universe. I don't know why it's not a huge YouTube channel. It should be. But that's the way of the world. All the good stuff gets pushed under and all the bad stuff gets to the top, I think. But I've learned an awful lot from you and from your webinars that I've managed to watch as well. So thank you very much for everything that you do in this space. It's a real honor to be here. And what I want to do today is this is a little bit different. I know that you guys usually have doctors on and researchers who share their extreme brilliance. I'm not brilliant at all, but I want to share with you some of my insights from my experiences, both as an athlete and what we can learn from an extreme athlete's mindset, if you like, as well as a story that I want to share with you and a case story about my mother afterwards as well. So yeah, I've been an ultra marathon runner for 25 years and done all those 70,000 kilometers and raced pretty much many deserts, from the Arabian, the Libyan, Niger, Jordan, Gobi Desert, Death Valley in the USA a couple of times, which you guys might know of a race over there in Badwater Ultra Marathon. I've done the outback of Australia a couple of times, different parts, the Indian and Nepalese Himalayas. And at one point I ran for charity right through New Zealand, doing 2,250 kilometers in 42 days. So that was like 52 marathons in 42 days. And the funny thing is, like, I never had absolutely no talent whatsoever to be an athlete. So I just really wanted to have lots of adventures and push my own limits. And through sheer determination and grit, I actually got, relatively good at it and ended up at number 10 in the world at one point. So it's more about grit and determination and overcoming obstacles than any sort of brilliance or genetic talent. But so the learning objectives for today, I really wanted to talk a little bit about mindset and mental toughness, because some of the things that I've learned as an athlete has been really able to help me in other areas of my life when it's about overcoming obstacles and not giving in, and how to grind out training and how to push through rehab situations, and all of these sorts of things that you come up against as an athlete, and what we can sort of take away from that. And then I want to go, as I said, into the case study with my mum, who had a massive aneurysm and a stroke 9 years ago, and I will talk to her incredible journey. I've also, through my podcasts, had the privilege of interviewing experts like Dr. Bill and many others, over 350 odd now over the last 9 years that the podcast has been going. And so I've been able to sit at the feet of masters, if you like, and learn and listen. And so although I have never been to medical school like all you guys have, and I don't have a PhD, I have had an unusual background and an unusual set of experiences that I'd love to share some of my learnings from that. And then just a brief at the end, I also want to touch on hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I run a hyperbaric oxygen clinic over here, and this is not going to be a really in-depth look at it, and I'm sure that a lot of you will probably know more about hyperbaric than I do even, but I did want to just share a little bit for those who don't know hyperbaric oxygen therapy and all its amazing things. So with that, I'm going to go and talk to you about a race that I did in Death Valley in the USA. And does anybody, will put your hand up or whatever that you do on Zoom. Has anyone ever been to Badwater or Death Valley or anything like that? Give me a wave if you have. Yeah, Joel's been there. Was it hot, Joel? Very hot. Yeah.
We have 29 palms over there in the desert area. It's very hot,
It's
extremely.
very.
In fact, you're only allowed to have 2 beers.
Because you can, it's extreme. Okay, so Death Valley, for those who don't know, in the ultra marathon world, it's sort of considered like Kona is for the Hawaiian Ironman athletes. It's sort of the world unofficial world champs of our sport. So to get a slot at this race takes a hell of a lot of a very long CV, and it took me 13 years to sort of qualify for this and to get a slot in this race. And the backstory was that I in my early 20s, I did a crossing of the Libyan desert, and this was an expedition, not a race. This was a 4-person expedition. I was there with the boyfriend at the time and two other guys, a Yugoslavian survival expert and another guy from Austria. And we decided to do this illegal crossing because you weren't allowed. This is a military barred area, but the most incredible, beautiful desert on earth. And we really wanted to cross this. And at that time, there was no maps of the area except pilot maps was all we could get hold of. And it was 250 kilometers, and we had to carry our entire water supplies on our back. So we had no outside support. So Joel, you'll probably relate to this. A backpack was like 35 kilos, which I don't know how much that is in pounds, but it was bloody heavy. And I only weighed like 58 kilos at the time. So trying to walk 45 kilometers a day with 2 liters of water and 40 plus degree temperatures with 35 kilos on your backpack. Joel, you might be able to relate to that, having been into desert environments. That's not sensible, shall we say. And I was young and stupid. But this was a really extreme adventure that sort of had was a turning point in my life. Number one, I'd been with the guy that I was with for 5 years, but it was a very abusive relationship. And in the middle of this desert, he decided to have a domestic with me because I wasn't helping him with the photography and doing enough. And he basically broke up with me in the middle of the Libyan desert. And you'll have to read my book, Running Hot, for that full story, and disappeared over the sand dunes on day 4. And so this was a time when like, if you can imagine, we're in dire straits, and I laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny at the time. And we're extremely dehydrated, like 2 liters of water a day, and those sort of temperatures is just absolutely horrific. And we were all short-tempered, as you could imagine. And so this big fight erupted between actually the two guys, so the leader of the expedition and the boyfriend, because the leader of the expedition didn't quite like the way he was treating me and thought it was not okay. And so he spoke up for me, and it sort of came to a head, and he left, and that was the end of the relationship pretty much. But at that time, I was about to fall apart because, my relationship's falling apart. And then I realized, hang on a minute, I'm in the middle of the Libyan desert and I've got to survive. And it was pretty touch and go. So in that moment, I learned one thing. I learned how to compartmentalize my mind so that I could still function and not fall apart in the, having to deal with the aftermath of a broken relationship, which I knew that I had to put that to the side and sort of carry on. And that really has stood me in good stead, being able to do that sort of thing. To cut a very long story short, we did make it out. I obviously survived, but I had quite a lot of physical damage. So it took me 2.5 years to recover. I had lots of damage to my kidneys and all the nerves in the upper body, and lots of other problems that it took me a couple of years to recover from. But at the end of that, it was a real turning point in my life where I said, hey, I want to have these adventures, but I don't want to do anything quite so crazy as that anymore. So I discovered at that point something called ultramarathon running, which I heard about a race in Morocco. And this was a race that this is a couple of years later, broken up with the boyfriend, right? And I'm recovered from the expedition. And now I hear about this race where you can go and run 240 kilometers across the Moroccan Sahara. And you've got 700 runners, and you've got journalists and doctors and airplanes and full support. It's like a big military base that moves every day across the Sahara. And I read about this, and it was touted as the toughest race on earth at that point. And so I'm like, I've never done an ultramarathon at this point, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I think I could do this. So I compared it to the Libyan desert. And so I signed up for this race, not knowing what I was getting myself in for, trained as best as I could. And back then we had no idea. We didn't even know, what salt tablets were or electrolytes or any of that sort of jazz. And so I did that race, and I was absolutely hooked. It was a the most empowering, positive experience. You've got all these people fighting through this big challenge in, you know, in the middle of this incredible desert, and but you're on a mission together. And it was a real brother and sisterhood there. The camaraderie was just amazing, and it just blew my mind. And so from then on, I was just absolutely addicted to ultramarathon running, and I ended up doing one after the other. And 25 years later, you know, I finally retired after doing way too many. Um, but it was a really powerful experience. And what I was hoping to do now is to share a little video clip from a race that I did in Badwater. So that was the Death Valley Ultramarathon. So let's have a go, Bill, see if it goes. If it doesn't, we'll give it a couple of minutes just to put you in the picture of what running an ultramarathon is. Okay, have a go. Is it going to have any sound at all? I think you might have the sound off, Bill. No? Oh, well, I can talk you through a couple of minutes of it anyway. As you can see, lots of adventures in different parts of the world. And what we're about to do is to go into the Death Valley Ultramarathon, which starts in a minute. And this is a 217 kilometre long race. This is actually in Death Valley now. It's going from below sea level up to 2,500 meters on Mount Whitney, and you've got another couple of mountain passes in the middle. And the temperatures there, oh yeah, here we go.
On the planet. It sits 85 meters below sea level. The air temperature here up to 57 degrees. The road through hell, if you're prepared to run it, is 217 kilometers long. When Lisa Tamati broke her back at 21, doctors told her to go easy on the running. So since then, she's run across the Moroccan Sahara twice, run 170k across the desert in Jordan, and narrowly survived kayaking down the Alaskan Yukon. Crossing the Libyan desert, she damaged her kidneys and all the upper body nerves in her shoulders. And in this heat, these ultra-endurance athletes are asked to run a seemingly impossible 217 kilometres. Over the course of this race, they'll climb higher than Mount Cook. More people have conquered Mount Everest than have finished this race.
Benny, Mike. Benny. Come on up. It's awesome, this race.
This heat can kill the unprepared. They don't call it Death Valley for nothing.
And I'm slowly coming right now. We're heading up a whopping great pass. That's part of the highs and lows, you know. I'm just got to try to get through the lows and not chuck it in. Sun's gone, I'm still bloody hot.
Imagine getting up for work on a Monday morning and just starting jogging or a little bit of walking. And then 2 days later, you still possibly haven't got to your destination. On top of that, imagine that you're doing it in your oven. If you imagine doing all of that and climbing Mount Taranaki a couple of times in the middle, then you'd be getting close to what she's been through.
Has she met?
She's different.
From 85 metres below sea level 34 hours ago to the foot of Mount Whitney, and arguably one of the toughest finishes in world sport.
Well, she's going to be on a gradient of about 17% at times. And it's going to be another half marathon for it to get to the top.
After having already done 5 marathons, of course.
Already having done 5 marathons.
Shattered but happy at the moment. But time for me that I never thought possible. If I can put it together.
At 2 o'clock in the morning, 38 hours after they started, Team Tamati emerged from the dark 10 hours ahead of what they had hoped.
I did it.
Right out of order.
Oh, well, that wasn't too bad, I suppose. Was that okay, guys? Sorry, the sound was a little bit off, but I think you get the sort of a picture. So, when you cross the finish line and something like that, it changes your perception of what you are actually capable of, because you're able to realize that you can do so much more than what you thought you could do. And therein lies the beauty of it. And it's not about being the person that got the medal put around your neck. And, let's be honest, we're a bunch of eccentric weirdos doing something quite crazy. There's no stadiums full of people shouting your name. There's no Olympic gold medals at the end of this one. But what there is the teamwork that went into that. The team that were with me, I'm standing on their shoulders. I would not have got across that finish line without the absolute dedication of those guys behind me. And these are some of the beautiful lessons that I took away from achieving that. And it was something for me that I would always had, been told by that boyfriend way back then, and he'd cycled through Death Valley, funnily enough, and that was part of the backstory that I forgot to tell you. So I was really, he'd always told me that I was useless and I was hopeless. I was never going to amount to anything, that I couldn't run. So 13 years later, when I actually crossed the finish line in Death Valley, it was like, for a moment for me, it was like, well, actually I can do it and I'm not useless, and actually I can run. You know what I mean? And especially being an asthmatic as well, and I broke my back when I was 21, and the doctors then told me that I would never run again, and they were wrong. So this all comes to play really when we talk a bit about my mum shortly. The following year I went back and did that one again. We won't go into that, but I did want to share you another very brief story of another race that I did in the Himalayas. Now, one of the reasons why I had done mostly deserts was because I was an asthmatic. I needed a hot, dry climate and something where there weren't too many mountains and it was more flatter, and then I could go for days. And I wasn't fast. I was never a fast runner, but I could just go and go and go, right? I had a good amount of endurance and an ability to endure a lot of pain and push through. And then I heard about this race in the Himalayas. Now, I'd read every Himalayan mountaineering book there is, so I was like, I want to race in the Himalayas. And then I'm like, well, you're no good in the cold and you're no good in the mountains and you're probably no good at altitude with your asthma. So what do? I go and sign up for this race, right? And this one was 222 kilometers, so a little bit longer than Death Valley, but it went from 3,600 meters up to 5,800 meters, back down to 3,600, and then back to 5,800. I don't know what that is in feet, but around 18,000 feet at the top of the passes there. So very, very high. You've got about 1/3 of the oxygen that you have. And the first year they ran this race, only 3 runners had turned up. And 2 of them had ended up in hospital with altitude sickness and other medical problems. And only 1 person had finished the race. And the guy that had won it, he was from England. His name was Mark. And I'd raced with Mark in Niger and the Sahara and Death Valley. And this guy was not your average guy. He ran through Death Valley. He climbed Mount Whitney and then he ran back again. That was just this bloke. He was just next level crazy. And he had actually finished this race. He managed it. So they knew that it was humanly possible, because humans had never run at this level this long and gone up twice to that sort of an altitude. So we were really pushing up against the limits of what humans had done as far as endurance at altitude went. And I rang him up and I said, hey, what was the race like? And he said, it was the toughest thing I've ever done. I've still got some health consequences from it a year later. But then he said to me one thing. He said, Lisa, do you realize no woman has done this race yet? And that was it. I didn't hear anything else. All I heard was no woman had done it and I wanted to be the first. So I signed up for this race and I had no idea how I was going to do it. And I tend to do that. I just jump on in and then work it out along the way. And so then I went, okay, what do I need to do? I need to adapt to altitude. I need more red blood cells. I need to carry more oxygen. Now, I had massive problems as a woman, a cycling woman who had anemia, right? I didn't have enough blood cells anyway because I used to have heavy periods as well. And so I was already struggling with anemia, and then you put on altitude to that was going to be a little bit of a problem. But I watched a video on this hypoxic tent that you could buy and you could sleep in it, and it would take part of the oxygen out of the air at night and help you adjust to altitude. And I managed to get one of these sponsored. And I started to follow the instructions, and it said to start off 1,500 meters high and then go up slowly over time. And so I started to do that. And then I was starting to run out of time before the race was coming, and I wasn't feeling like I had any more energy or anything else. So I rang up my ex-husband. He was in that last video, and he's an Austrian, and he was a ultramarathon runner as well. And I said to him, hey, you've got one of these tents. Do I need to follow the instructions, or can I go straight up higher faster because I'm running out of time before the race? And he said, don't follow the instructions. Just go to 6,500 meters every night and sleep in it every night. And I'm like, are you sure? Is that safe? And he said, yeah, I've done it before. Now, I don't know if any of you ladies listening have got ex-husbands, but if you do, never, ever trust your ex-husband. He may be trying to knock you off. This one was, obviously. I slept in this thing at 6,500 meters every night, and I started to have I was very tired, very fatigued. I was having some issues, but I thought, well, this is just part of the course, and I've got to push through, right? And I'm going to get more blood cells and be able to carry more oxygen. But after a couple of weeks, I started to have some problems. Now, you medical doctors will know that when you don't have enough oxygen in the body, what happens? You end up with a proliferation of bacteria. And so I was starting to have infections in all the orifices, and I was starting to have brain issues. Now, you might think I have a few mental issues anyway, but this was a little bit different. I was having missing bits of my memory. I'd forget, I'd talk to you one day, forget who you were the next day, that type of thing going on. And so I went to my doctor, my sports doctor, and I said, and he knew the sort of crazy stuff I got up to. And he said, oh, what have you been doing? And I said, well, I'm preparing for this altitude race, and I've been sleeping in this tent, and I think I might have, pushed it a little bit hard. And he said, well, how high were you sleeping? I said, 6,500 meters. And he said, and what was your SpO2 stats, when you put your little thing on your finger at night? I said, well, about 70%. Now, you guys will know, I didn't know, but that's apparently not a good thing. 70% is a very low oxygen saturation, and I was knocking off my brain cells, and I'd created a hypoxic brain concussion. And so I was, I had a brain injury from this, basically. And so he said to me, look, you've got to get out of that tent, and you better pull out of the race because you've already now sensitized your body to altitude, and this is really not a good idea. And I'm like, I can't pull out of this race. I've just spent the last year and a half training. I've got sponsors. I've got a film crew. I've got obligations. I can't pull out. And so I'm going, but I'll get out of the tent and I'll try to recover. He said, well, you better do that. So I did that, and I started to slowly improve. And then I went over to Australia a few weeks later to do a preparation race in the Blue Mountains. And this was 100 Ks in the mountains. And I did this race, and I got through okay. It wasn't great, but I got through it. And then the next day I was doing a photo shoot for my sponsors, the North Face. And the North Face, when they do a photo shoot, it's a bloody photo shoot. You're out there for 15 hours with multiple photographers, and it's a full-on day, right? And we were still out there at nighttime, and I was very fatigued from running the 100K the day before. And they were doing these night shots with flashes, and the flash hit my eyes, and I came down on my ankle and mistimed my step and ended up twisting my ankle and rupturing the ligaments on both sides of my ankle, ripped them on my left ankle. And this was like 10 weeks out from the race. And the docs were saying, well, you're probably going to need 7 weeks before you can run again. You better pull out of the race. And I'm like, oh my God, I've had the worst build up I can possibly have. But, oh, well, I better, when I'm faced with an obstacle, I just look at not what I can't do, but what I can do. And how do I get around the obstacle? Okay, I can't run anymore, but I can still do weight training. I can still swim. I can still work on my mindset. I can still do everything else. So that's what I decided to do. I couldn't run for 7 weeks, so what else can I do to still get there? And I'm going, and I might as well just give it my all and go anyway. So I did that, and after 7 weeks, I was able to start slowly back running, and then we were basically off. We went over to northern India. This is in a place called Leh is where we were staying, up in the Ladakh region of northern India. And we get there, and there's 7 runners who have turned up to compete in this crazy event, and 5 of them are women. And I was peeved off, I tell you. I thought that I'd be the only woman, and I just had to get across the finish line in the last place, and I'd be the first woman home, right? And no, 5 of them were women. Only 2 guys turned up. One lady did look at the place and she went, "This is crazy. I'm out of here. It's too dangerous." And so she left. And then we had the the military up there, and they were trying to stop the race because they were concerned that their tourism was going to be impacted if all these crazy runners came and died while running this race, because it was really dangerous what we were doing at that altitude. And so they were trying to stop the race, and they knew that humans shouldn't be going up to that altitude that fast and then coming back down and going back up. And so there was all this negativity in the camp. And then we had a group of doctors come over from America to study us, because they wanted to see what happens to the human body when you're putting it under this extreme load at this extreme altitude. So they were doing tests on us, and blood tests, and keeping an eye on us as well, and giving us lectures on pulmonary edema and cerebral edema and how you can die this way and that way. And it was really scary. I was like pretty, terrified by this point. And everything in the build-up had gone wrong, and I was sensitized to altitude. I was not increasing my blood cell count. I was going backwards. I'd had anemia, severe anemia going on, and I was really not in a great shape. And it got to the point where I'm like, I really should pull out of this race. But I've just flown all the way with my crew, with my film crew, to India from New Zealand. And so I'm like, well, I've come all this way. I might as well give it everything I've got, right? And so once you decide that you're going to go for it, whatever the challenge is that you're taking on, you don't need to know about the negatives of it. You don't need to know all the fear-mongering things. You just need to know that, okay, I'm going for it. What have I got to do to plan, to prepare, to be the best that I can be? And then cut out everything else. So surround yourself. So I said to my crew, I want you to protect me from everyone. Protect me from the doctors. Protect me from the other runners, from the military. Keep everyone out of my face so that I can actually just focus on being positive for the last couple of days before this race goes, because I was pretty terrified at this point. And that's what they did. We planned and we prepped, and they talked me off a cliff 100 times because I didn't want to. I was terrified, to be honest. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And then you wake up on that day of the race, and it's 4 a.m. in the morning, and the alarm goes, and you wake up and you're like, oh no, it's that day where you got to go and run 222 Ks across the Himalayas. And you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? And then when I'm putting on my start gear, I'm putting on my running clothes and my start number. And when I put my start number on, that's a ritual for me. It's like putting on my armor. That's like I'm becoming something that I'm not in my everyday life. And I'm trying to pump myself up, so that I'm full of testosterone by the time I'm standing on that start line, and I'm doing my power poses, and I'm doing, I've got this, I get my game face on. And I get to the start line at 6 a.m. and we know, my crew are like, we've got this. And I'm absolutely terrified. And all I want to do is run home to mummy and hide under the sheets, really. But I've got to go, So I'm off, and I let everybody go. Everyone's racing out. And I'm like, I'm going to take it real conservative. I'm going to go up really nice and slowly. And we're going to, my guys are planning it. I'll just hold that for a second, Bill. And we'll just go out slowly up this pass. And I get up the first pass. We're walking at the top. You're not running, because you can't run at that altitude. And then I'm going down the other side, and I'm going, right, now I'm going downhill after a few hours. I should be able to run now. So I start running, and then I end up having an asthma attack. The docs have to give me some asthma medication. They take me off the course for half an hour, put me back out on the road, and now I'm going back down and then into the town of Leh. And once we get down to the 3,600 meter level, and it's like the middle of the night now, and we're trying to get through this Indian town with chaos traffic, and my crew are trying to keep me alive because I'm completely out of it by this time. And then we're going through another 24 hours of racing. We go past the Dalai Lama's house. That was really cool. And then in through the night, and then in the next day, and then the next day, right? Then I know that the second pass is going to be the one that makes or breaks me. And that's my big nemesis, is coming at me, because you've got to go up to altitude a second time, and your body's already been out there for 30, 40 plus hours, and you're going to be in dire straits. I'm coming in the next morning to this valley before we go up this pass, and it's real extreme heat. So down in the valleys, it was like 40 odd degrees. Up on the mountains, it could be minus degrees and snowing, but down there it was 40 degrees, and I get heat stroke. pass out. My crew have to carry me to the van, pull me out after half an hour, stick me back out on the road, and now I'm completely out of it. I'm like down to a complete slow walk, and I'm facing down the barrel of 35 kilometers up a mountain, up a huge, great pass. And I'm like, in my heart, I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to get back up there. There's no way. Every step that you go higher, there's less oxygen, and you're already struggling to breathe down here, let alone up there. And if anyone's been to altitude, it's like breathing through a straw. You just cannot get the oxygen. So your heart is just pumping and you're just going even at a walking speed. And I'm walking really slowly now. And there's a battle raging in my head. I just want to sit down and stop. I'm in pain. I'm exhausted. I'm sleep deprived. I just don't want to carry on. And then I'm like, I owe it to my crew to just keep going until I can go no more. And so I just promised myself to keep taking one step, no matter how slow, no matter how tough things get, until I can no longer take another step. And I do this and I get higher and higher and higher, and then it gets colder and colder. And then I start to get hypothermia, and my guys are putting layer upon layer of clothing. My team were just pulling out all the stops to keep me moving. And then we'd have convoys of trucks coming through with 30, 40 trucks coming past at once. And they were spewing out all this unfiltered diesel into this really thin atmosphere. And I got a mouthful of diesel at one point. I just really choked and I couldn't get any oxygen, and had a bit of a panic attack. And then the guys had to calm me down again and then put me out on the road. And then I'm down to like 100, 200 meters at a time before I have to stop and rest. And then a snowstorm comes in, and I kid you not, like we're now in the Himalayas in the middle of a snowstorm. I've been out there for 40 something hours, and we're 3/4 of the way up this pass, and I am hanging on for dear life, 100 meters at a time before I have to stop and then catch my breath and then go another. And I'm trying to calculate how far is it to the top of this pass. And I'm calculating, and I think it's only like 2 kilometers to the top. And I say to one of my guys, please go and calculate it properly. Tell me how far is it? Because I'm hanging on for dear life here. And they come back and they said, at least, no, it's not 2 Ks, it's 6 kilometers. And that absolutely broke me. I could not comprehend another 2 hours of the slow going. And I collapsed in the snow, in the snowstorm in the middle of this mountain. And I just bawled my eyes out. And I just said, that's it, I'm done. I've broken. I can't go anymore. And my crew, they came around and they huddled around me. And they told me that I was amazing, that I was just I'd given everything, and they were so proud of me, and they gave me permission to fail. And then there was one guy in my crew, and he came and sat down, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he shook me, and he said, no bloody way, you're going to fail now. Get your ass up off the ground and take another step. And I'm going to stay out here with you, and I'm going to get you up to the top of this pass. You're not going to fail this close to the top. Not after 18 months of training. Not after me being in that car for 45 plus hours. You are going to move. And I was so shocked that he wasn't just hugging me and telling me it was okay, that I got up and I walked. And I walked again. And another one of the guys came out and he said, and I'll stay with you. And these two walked and talked me up to the top. And sometimes we all need people to get us over that pass, right? To come along and pick us up and say, mate, I've got you. Come on, we can do this. You're not going to fail. And that's what these two guys did for me. And they got me up to the top of this pass called Tanglang La. And I got to the top. And I knew that I was going to make it. I had 33 kilometers still to go, but it was all downhill. And to cut a very long story short, I did it in 53 hours and 5 minutes. But I was the second woman home. And I was beaten by a 55-year-old grandmother from England who also had asthma. Age is no barrier. Your sex is no barrier. Your ethnicity is no barrier. Nothing is a barrier when you really, really, really want something and you're prepared to fight for it. Bill, could you play number 2? This is a little snippet out of the documentary. If anyone wants to watch the full documentary, I can share that after. Let's just hope that this plays for you. It's only 1 minute, so if it doesn't, but just to show you that I'm not telling fibs, this is the Himalayas. Is the sound going to go?
Hear it?
Yep.
This was definitely
Now the sounds. Oh,
the
yep.
most brutal, toughest race that I've done.
It's a 222-kilometer run. It has to be done within 60 hours, crossing the 2 highest notable mountain passes, average altitude of something like 14,000 feet. The oxygen content can go to as low as 30%. With less oxygen going to your brain, That's a tough one because you need that oxygen to stay alive.
I knew I was putting myself out there in this race, but I didn't quite know how much.
I expect the heat. I didn't expect the cold, rain, or snow.
We all come here to finish. And that's the challenge. Time isn't the issue. It's about finishing. This is an adventure.
I couldn't believe that.
This is something else.
Everything that an ultramarathon should be. I think it's just incredible.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to watch a doco, I can send it over. The music obviously didn't play very well, but you get the idea, a bit of the gist. That was running in the Himalayas. Now, I'm going to flip things now and stop talking about running because we've had enough about running. You're not here to learn about running. But I want to talk to you about my mum's story and what I learned from the running really helped me in this situation. And this is a really empowering and powerful story. So my mum, Isabel, had a massive aneurysm and a stroke 9 years ago. And, you know, we got that phone call that we all dread where she'd collapsed on the floor at home and the ambulance driver thought that she was having a neurological event. Unfortunately, the doctor in the ED decided she was having a migraine and just left her with some painkillers. And we were left waiting for hours upon hours in the ED here. And after 4 hours, and my mum was in extreme pain. They say it's one of the worst pains that you can ever experience when you have a bleed in the brain and your brain's been squashed. But they thought it was migraine and they just left her there for 4 hours. And I was getting desperate because I didn't know anything. I had no medical background. I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know what to do. But I rang up a friend of mine who was a paramedic who had crewed for me on different races. And I said, can you get up here? You know, Mum, and she's in deep trouble and I don't know what to ask for. And so she came up and she took one look at her and said, she's having an aneurysm or a stroke or a neurological event. And we need a CT scan. So she went to the doctor and she said, get it. And she knew him. And she said, get a CT scan now. I know this lady, she's not full of shit and she's not just having a migraine. And so he finally relented after it was now 6 hours in. We finally got the CT scan. And that sort of made me hyper alert that I had let all that time go without saying something and not, sticking up for what I just didn't know. I was caught out, right? I felt like I'd been caught out. And when the CT came back, they said there's blood right throughout the brain. We don't think she's going to survive. And we live in a little regional town. And so they said we're going to have to take her through to the capital and get to the big hospital. And we're going to have to get an air ambulance, but we don't think she's going to make it. And at that time, I was like just pleading with God or whoever in the universe that if I had a chance, I would spend if I could just have a chance to get her back, I'll do whatever it takes to rehabilitate her. And so I was bargaining away there with God and just saying, give us a chance, give me a chance. And so from that point on, I decided I was going to, study and not be caught out again if I could possibly help it. And my dad came up to me, and my dad had been married to my mum for 53 years at that point, and he was like, we better start preparing for the funeral. They don't think she's going to make it. And I did what that friend did for me in the Himalayas. I grabbed him by the shoulders and I said, Dad, she's still alive, she's still breathing, and I promise you I'll do everything in my power to bring her back. I want you to get down to Wellington, get my brothers, I'll stay here with her. I'll take her in the air ambulance and we'll see you down there. And so he was a fireman and used to action, so he jumped into action and did that and got down there. And then we got through to Wellington, but it was another 12 hours waiting for the air ambulance. Unfortunately, when you're older, you get bumped down the priority list, at least over here. And it took another 12 hours before she was down in Wellington. So a total of 18 hours before she got into surgery. And of course, the golden standard is sort of an hour after something like this if you want to have a chance at surviving with any sort of quality of life. But we had an 18-hour wait. We got in there, they put a stent in and started to drain the blood off. And at that point, they said, we won't know whether she's going to survive or what's going to happen for the next few weeks as the brain, as you guys will know, the biochemical cascade of inflammation that starts to come out when you've had such an event. You don't know the implications of it in that first instance. I didn't understand any of that at that point, but I started to study. In the critical care situation, I really couldn't do a heck of a lot except be hypervigilant and we set up a 24-hour vigil at her bedside, much to the doctor's disgust because they didn't like us having us in there, but we really fought to stay in there. On day 3, she dropped into a full coma and they took her then into the ICU, and I realised how much more they could do in ICU than they were doing on the ward. And again, it sort of made me realise that I hadn't known to push for that, to ask for that. They did a coiling operation where they went in and they put a coil in there and they blocked off the aneurysm from bleeding anymore, and she survived that, but they had a stroke during the operation, and so she was now paralyzed on the right side, and she was in and out of coma for the next 3 weeks, and she was losing more and more of her brain as this biochemical cascade of inflammatory cytokines and stuff started to wreak havoc in her brain over that period of time. After 3 weeks, she did stabilize and then she survived, and they said to us, look, she's going to survive, but there's massive brain damage and she'll never ever have any quality of life again. And we'll take her through to New Plymouth. At that point, they took her back to our regional town and they, started to do rehab, which was very little. And in that time, I started to see in my mum some of the things that I'd seen with the hypoxic brain concussion that I'd had. I was seeing a proliferation of bacteria, and I was noticing that when she was in Wellington and she was on oxygen, she was doing slightly better. I mean, she was terrible, but she was doing slightly better than she was doing in New Plymouth. She was going backwards. So I started to think about oxygen, and I started to research and came across sleep apnea as a possibility. So I said, I want a sleep apnea assessment. And the doctor said, no, why should we do a sleep apnea assessment? No point. There's that's not a thing here. And I said, well, my research has shown that when you've had an aneurysm or a stroke, that sometimes can be, happen, that you need a CPAP machine because you'll have sleep apnea after that. And they wouldn't let me do it. So I smuggled a consultant into the hospital one night who happened to be a friend of ours who was a sleep consultant. And he came in and he did a sleep apnea assessment, and he came back with severe sleep apnea. And she was down at 70% at night with her oxygen stats, and she was chain-stoked breathing, and she was stopping breathing hundreds of times a night. So that was my very first win, because then we got a CPAP machine onto her, and then she started to get a little bit of oxygen, right? So this was a major win. If we hadn't have found that, we wouldn't have, she probably wouldn't have survived for too many more months after that. And then I went, okay, what else can oxygen do? And so I was researching, and I came across a Dr. Paul Harch in America, who's a hyperbaric oxygen specialist, who talked about brain rehabilitation and for brain injuries. And I'd watched some incredible videos that he'd put up, and I was like, I've got to get her hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Now, she was still in the hospital at this point, and I was still learning, and I still didn't know very much. And I was bringing in all her food. I'd changed her diet. I'd learned about the keto diet. I was starting to implement some of those things that I could within the hospital. And then it came time for them to say, right, we need to put her into an institution. She's 24/7, 2-person, round-the-clock care. There's no way that your family is ever going to cope with her. And I wanted her home, because I believe that when the person's in their own home environment with their loving family and their things around them, that they'll have a chance at rehabilitation. And they said, well, she doesn't even know who she is or what she is. Why would you not put her in a home? It's going to, stress all your resources. And I was just like, this is my mother. I'm going to take her home. And so I had a hell of a battle in the hospital to get the resources to take her home, because it meant she stayed in their budget rather than going into another institution's budget. So they didn't want that. So I had to really fight to get her home and to get the resources. And I remember the social worker saying to me, you'll be back here begging for my help in 2 weeks, because there's no way in hell you're going to cope with her at home. And I came in and I threw my books at him and I said, this is who I am, and I'm not going to be needing your help, and I will get her back. And I was right and he was wrong. I got her home, and the first day I got her home, I'd found a hyperbaric chamber at a commercial dive company, of all places, in our town. And this was the only thing. We didn't have any clinics. And so I went to these people and I begged them to use their chamber, and I showed them my research and my situation, and they said, yep, you sign a legal waiver and we'll let you do that. Incredible people. They The day I got her out of the hospital, I didn't even go home. I just went straight to this factory. We stuck her on a forklift and we stuck her in this giant hyperbaric chamber that looks like an LPG cylinder. And we started to put her through treatment after treatment, day in, day out. And she couldn't move anything, so we had to use a forklift to get her in. And after 33 treatments, she started to respond. Like, she didn't just get up and walk, but she started to have a couple of words. She started to move her right arm, which had been fully paralyzed. She started to have a flicker of intelligence and moving her arms and things like this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is working. This is doing something. But it had already been 33 treatments and it was only a minor improvement at this point, but it was working and it was all I had. And then I lost access to the chamber. So another obstacle. What do I do now? So I mortgaged the house, I bought a hyperbaric chamber, I installed it in my house, and then I had to work out, how do I get her in? She's paralyzed. And then I had a mild hyperbaric chamber that's very hard to get somebody into. I worked out a way of doing it with the support of my big brothers and dad, and we would put her in day after day. And then I started to develop a program around her as she started to come back. I stayed one step ahead of her in my research, and I studied functional neurology and how to reestablish the vestibular system and the keto diet and supplementation and all of these aspects that I had no idea of, but I just put one foot in front of the other and tried to stay ahead of her. And we're talking like thousands of hours of rehabilitation went back into her day in, day out. And the doctors were like, she's got neural fatigue. You can't do more than a couple of minutes at a time. And I said, absolutely rubbish. There is another thing that I can do. When her brain tires of this, then I will do something else. I will move her limbs for her. I will talk to her. I will, whatever I was doing at the time, I would find another way. So I had this incredibly, detailed protocols that I started to develop. And then I just did day in, day. Now, if there's one thing that ultramarathoners know how to do, it's how to grind out training and rehab, because we know how to train for hour upon hour or every day. Because when you're retraining a brain, they forget. They don't know what's happening. So you have to teach them 1,000 times a day how to do the same thing that you've just taught them. But it's that repetition that slowly started to rehabilitate her. It took me about 13 months to get her out of the wheelchair and for her to take her very first steps. And it took me 2.5 years to get her back to full capacity again, full driver's license. You don't get your driver's license without your full brain capacity back, full power of attorney back over her life and her finances, full going to the gym every, 5 days a week, going out with her girlfriends. And I've written a book about this journey, and it's called Relentless. I don't know if you guys can see that. Oh, can you see that book? That's my mum there on the cover. And it's been an incredible journey. And it was against all prognosis. She was 74 years old at the time when this happened. And within 2 years, we had her back, she didn't get back to absolute 100%, and her reserve capacity, she would go offline if she got an infection of any sort, her brain would be impacted but she had a really good quality of life. And then 3 years ago, we were hit with a CNS lymphoma. She had a terminal cancer diagnosis, and the doctors, I took her into the ED. She had a drop face on the right-hand side, and I thought she was having another stroke. I took her up to the ED, the emergency, and they said, they did a CT scan. They couldn't see anything. They said, oh, no, she's fine. And they sent me home again. 2 days later, I went back with her blood pressure through the roof and her slurring of her speech, and she was dribbling and she was, doing all those sorts of things. And I took her back in and they sent me home again. And I knew that there was something massively wrong. And we'd already had all of these misadventures in the beginning. So I was in hyper alert, and I was trying to get an MRI because the CT scan doesn't show everything. It took me 3 weeks of fighting and battling to get an MRI, and I managed to finally get an MRI, and then it came back that she had tumours, one big, massive grapefruit-sized tumour on the left-hand side of the brain, and then smaller tumours at the front. And then they went, oh, shoot, yeah, she's got, tumours. And so then I chased a the country's best neurosurgeon around until I got him on the phone. And I said, this is my situation. Would you operate? And he said, yep, get her down here on Tuesday. So the following Tuesday, we were down in Wellington again. He was a surgeon and had operated on her initially. And he operated, took the tumor out, and unfortunately, he came back with this aggressive CNS lymphoma. And then they said to us, there's nothing we can do. She's now 80 years old, and the chemo that we would do for a younger person would kill her, and there's nothing we could do. And so I went back to my network, which is now pretty large, thankfully, and I started to study the metabolic approach to cancer. And I did advanced genetic testing, RGCC testing. I found out which chemos she would respond to, which immunotherapies she would respond to, which supplements she would respond to. I started to put a protocol together. I put 15 doctors on her team, and we threw the bus at it. Like, literally, we sold a house, we used the money to finance all of this, and I started to just throw everything I possibly could, because they said you've got weeks to live. We doubled down on the hyperbaric. We did intravenous vitamin C, we did peptides, we did a full strict keto diet. I put together a protocol of 28 different supplements, and it took us 12 weeks to get rid of the tumors on the MRI. And we're now 3 years into that story, and I've released a book called What Your Oncologist Isn't Telling You, and it's the interview series with 21 of the world's top people in the metabolic approach to cancer. And I now work with people in the cancer realm, helping them navigate through traditional and metabolic approaches. And Mum's free of cancer, touch wood, currently, and we never want to say you're cured, because, as you guys will know, cancer's a beast that has many different heads and can come back to bite us in the ass. But currently she's doing very, very well, except that last year she also had 3 gastrointestinal bleeding sessions where she nearly died 3 times with massive gastrointestinal bleeding. The 3rd time she had 16 units pumped into her of blood to keep her alive. At one point they were going to operate and take her whole stomach out. Luckily they'd misread the blood test, so I had decided to hold off, even though the blood test had come back with a hemoglobin of I think it was 49, and they were about to go in and operate, and we were trying to make this life and death decision. It turned out that the blood test had been falsely measured, and she managed to survive that. Then we had another E. coli infection in December, and then she broke her hip in February of this year. All of those things could have knocked her off, and very nearly did knock her off. But we're now 6 months into her rehabilitation from her hip. She's now walking independently again. She's now back at the gym. She's out today with my brothers, and she's enjoying life again. So that's my mum's story. Bill, can you play video number 3? Please meet my mum, Isabel. This might not play with the music, but you can.
We need to run. Go, mummy. Go. That's awesome. Keep running. Keep those arms marching and running. Good job.
Just so glad they never gave up on me, and I've got my life back.
That's my mum, Isabel. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. What I'm hoping that you guys, take away from this is, I did have some slides there from hyperbaric, which we can go over as well, but I think probably a Q&A session at this point would probably be more beneficial if you're interested. But it is really never giving up and not. My mum has been written off so many times. My mum has had so many doctors telling her she's going to die. She's not dead, and she's still living life, and she still wants to be here. And it's really important to me to bring across that message that when people are older, that we don't write them off too early, that we give them a chance to come back, and that we don't take away all hope. I know that we're not allowed to give false hope, but we need to also empower, especially families that are willing to fight for their loved ones. And it's part of the work I do now is really being an advocate for people in those sort of situations and trying to help them navigate this, because there are some issues with our medical system, as you guys will know, that we need to make some changes. We need to cherish life, and there will come a point when we're all going to die, but I could have, if I hadn't fought so hard, if my family hadn't fought so hard, and if mum hadn't wanted to fight so hard, we wouldn't be still here fighting. But sometimes you can beat the odds. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. And I really hope that you've got some questions for me. Bill, back over to you.
Unbelievable. I mean, just from the marathon to taking care of mom, you're an incredible person. I mean, I don't know what else to say. There's just, there's
thank you.
Aren't those that are that dedicated, and you're attributing your marathon training to being able to carry that over to taking care of your mother. Is that one of
a lot of it? Yeah, I think that training certainly helped. Yeah, but we can all learn. We've all had to overcome obstacles. It doesn't have to be running in that sense. It's just that taking those hard moments in life and turning them into positives and holding a vision. I think, when mum had that original aneurysm, I had a vision of writing a book. I had a vision of her inspiring and empowering other people. And she's gone on to inspire hundreds of thousands of people. She's been on documentaries and movies, and she's got her book, and, she's a shining light to many other people, because of her resilience and her determination to keep going. And, I think that's a powerful message. And I think in my case, having that background really helped me. And I'll be honest with you, it's still a 24/7 thing. I'm 9 years in, I've been looking after mum for 9 years. My whole life is impacted. I can't travel. I can't come and see you guys in the States, which I'd love to, but I cannot leave her alone for any period of time. There are sacrifices to be made, but you do that for your loved ones, and you do it gladly, and you've had good parents. And my parents were amazing. So, I'm just dedicated to her. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you don't take no for an answer, do you?
No, definitely don't. I fight to the end.
Listening to you in awe, I just don't even know what to say. I mean, we are not worthy here. Well, maybe John is, but the rest of us.
Hey, Lisa, if I may speak, when you were talking about the resistance you got, and sometimes it feels like ugliness and darkness that you come up against when you do the right thing, try the right thing, and for that you are punished. About half the people on this call, especially Bill and a few others that I won't name, have gone to hell and back, and their only crime, their only problem is they were doing exactly what you're doing. Not just trying to help one person, but trying to help 100, or in Bill's case, 1,000. And the resistance we've had to that almost destroyed us. But as you can see, this organization has survived. And we're trying to do more and more exactly the same thing you're doing. I don't even see a difference. Are you in New Zealand now?
Yes, I am. And this is why I was attracted to your group. And why I was attracted to Bill, because he stands up for what's the truth, and he puts his patients ahead of his own needs. And I saw that in the group when I listened to your other lecturers, amazing people that you've had. And I don't feel worthy to be on here next to all the incredible doctors and scientists that, like I didn't even go to university for, all I've got is a bachelor's, but it's
however you grade people, you're at the top, and I hope you will stay with us forever.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
We like to say you haven't been tainted by the medical school mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't apologize for not being a doctor. Sometimes we should apologize for being doctors, I think. So
there you go. There you go. Hey, well, we're putting together an international research committee, and all of that tied in to support our group as an ethical medical group. And several of us, one of us, Dr. Melvin Nario, he's one of our top-notch guys, like Bill. As a matter of fact, they even work in the same office and share with one another. So we're going to put an international group of research together where we can simply tell the truth. That's all we want to do, tell the truth.
Exactly.
That and be part of this international team.
I definitely want to chime in. Tony Robbins was at 29 Palms, the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And he was speaking to the colonel. And the colonel asked him why my Marines drop off. Why do they lose their discipline? And Tony didn't know how to answer him. And he came back a couple days later and he said, because you lost your team. They lost their team.
Yeah.
It's all about the team, even the Navy SEALs. It's all about the team. Your team gets you. I took 4 bags of IVs in Korea once because I was so passing out. And the team got me to comprehend that I needed IVs. And so how important do you think God, the source, was to you in all these dark moments that we all know that you had?
Yeah, and continue to have. I'm not religious in the normal sense of, like going to church, but I believe there is something after this. I have a deep connection. I believe I didn't even go into the story of my dad. I lost my dad 4 years ago, and that was another horrific situation. And maybe that's a story for another day. The battle that I had there. Just briefly, he had a aortic aneurysm and had sepsis developed after that. He survived the operation, but and I was fighting to get intravenous vitamin C because I was aware of Dr. Paul Marrick's work and in sepsis and vitamin C, and I just came up against a brick wall, and the ethics committee in the ICU just would not let me use intravenous vitamin C, and he was dying and they had no other options. And I fought for 16 days against the ethics committee to try vitamin C, which may or may not have saved his life, but it could well have. And I just came up against a brick wall, and I fought for 16 days. I found a legal loophole where my GP was able to come in, but by then he had multiple organ failure and he was at death's doorstep. And in spite of that, the very first vitamin C started to turn the ship around, but then they stopped me doing the second, they stopped me doing the third, and I had to fight because the protocol was 6 hourly and I could only get it into him every 18 hours. And then, eventually it got to the point where it was just too late and they would only do half of the doses that I was asking for, et cetera, et cetera. It's another whole hour's story in itself, but that broke me. That broke me because I lost that time. I've so far I've managed to keep my mum with me and keep her happy and joyful and still have a quality of life. I lost my dad, and my dad was a very precious, amazing person, and I feel like he was robbed and we were robbed. And so that's why I fight. That's why I fight any way I can. And when I go into our local hospital, it's like an alternate universe. It's like back in the 1950s, and it's a communist regime. They're not up on the latest. And I'm treated like an idiot because I'm not a doctor. And what would you know? And it's sad. it's sad. And I gravitate towards people like yourselves, and I'm actually starting a group, which I'd love to maybe join our two groups somehow together. I'm literally starting it next month. We've got our first meeting of doctors and allied health professionals that I'm trying to get together so we can educate in the latest stuff and talk about in an open forum these types of issues without being shot down, because this is very important work. So I'm tentatively putting together a group at the moment, and any support or encouragement, or if you want to come and join us on those calls, because I'm finding my feet and I'm feeling a little bit not worthy being there again. There's some issues that I've got perhaps, but I want to educate our doctors and our people down here about what's going on and give them a place to talk and have that network, that teamwork that you spoke of, Joel.
What's the name of the group?
It's going to be what have I called it? The Longevity and Health Optimization Focus Group. So something to that effect. So I'll let you know. We have our first meeting, and it's a mix of traditional doctors, but I'm hoping to sort of open their minds a little bit too.
They work with us, and we can work with you.
Yeah.
We're easy.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Let us in on the, we can help you plan it even. Okay.
Fabulous.
We can do
That'd
that.
be fabulous.
I see a road trip in the future. She can't come to us. I think we need to come to her.
Come and hang out at my place.
About halfway to Mongolia, right? I don't think I told you my son lives in Mongolia, so.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, no, we are. So, yeah, we're right down the other end of the planet. But hey, I would love you guys to come down here. I live in a lovely little beach town, and you can go surfing on your days off. And
you're gonna just do some running too, right? So.
Yeah, not too long though. I found out it wasn't that healthy. Now that I know what I know, I wouldn't do it again. I didn't know. I was ignorant of that. So
Lisa, it's a great story that you just said. A story of such resilience and success. So I wanted to share with you here. So I'm here in the Philippines now, and you mentioned about your father receiving treatments, and you're trying to push for vitamin C. The wonderful thing that I figured out here in the Philippines was I found practitioners who actually can give these alternative therapies in the hospitals.
Really?
So they are giving, well, here's the thing. They're doing this incognito, like under the sheets. But I was talking to these doctors here because I was telling them about, hey, we can actually have a study that is related to these integrative treatments being given to hospital settings. Because right now, our current therapies are only being given as outpatient. And now we're talking, I actually spoke to doctors who gave chelation therapy in the hospital setting, high dose vitamin C. And it's just that I have to nitpick them out just because, of course, they're not being out there because of them getting in trouble for such things.
Exactly.
But this is happening here, and just getting them all together. And I think some of them are in this call too. I think when John is talking about a research, here's a research for you. And we're talking about sick patients receiving integrative therapies. So just to show you that there's light ahead of the tunnel here in relation to what you trying to do with your dad. I'm sorry to hear about that as well.
Yeah, like intravenous vitamin C, I'm a big fan of it. I've used it for mum in her rehabilitation, from the aneurysm, the stroke, just for immune support. I've used it in the cancer as an adjunct therapy as well. And in sepsis, I don't know if you know the studies, and I can send them over with Dr. Paul Marek. And I've had a number of them, the vitamin C researchers on my podcast. But it's super powerful, like that alone. And then there are many other things, as you said, like chelation and other things that we could be doing in the setting of the hospital. But one of my dreams is to get the right to try law, which you have in some states in America. So at the end of life, if the doctors have run out of options, that you have the right to try. You sign a legal waiver and abscond them from any wrongdoing. and then you can do something like intravenous vitamin C, you know, like how powerful. And I get rung up, you know, and emailed from other families in the same situation as I was in, and I've helped, you know, try to fight their battles, but we've lost every time. We just come up against it. We just, doesn't matter if we come with the clinical studies and the clinical research, they don't care. It's a legal battle. So we need to change the law so that, you know, and it feels like a ginormous task. It feels, but in the Philippines, they're probably far more progressive than what we are here in New Zealand. We are really, it's just like, you know, back in the 1950s here. It's absolutely
Well, I'm
ridiculous.
curious about your mom. You said I'm a big user of RGCC in terms of their testing for cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that you use RGCC results for
Yep.
your mom's protocol. I was just wondering, because every time we show RGCC to our oncologists, conventional oncologists here, they scratch
Yep.
their head, they laugh at you,
Yep.
they even kick you out of their service. How did
Wow.
you use RGCC for your mom's protocol?
So I had to go to private. So, you know, because I went up to our local oncology at the hospital and they just said, she's dead, there's nothing you can do. And they wouldn't give us anything. So then I heard about RGCC and got the test done. And then I went private. So I had to drive all the way to the other side of the country and took my sick mum with me. And I went into an office of an oncologist there. And what I found is that private oncology, when you're paying for it, they're more open. And they know, and this oncologist had never seen an RGCC before, but he was open and he said it makes a whole lot of sense. If you want to get, because I was after temozolomide and I was after rituximab, those were the two that it showed the sensitivities for. I already had the supplements in the mix, so I was already doing that, but I was after those two particular. And so he managed to convince the oncology team back here in my hometown to give us the right, I had to pay privately for it, but to actually prescribe it for us so that we could get it. And so it was a roundabout way, but I'm very persistent, you know. I am very in their face until I don't say no, don't take no very easily. So, but anybody else would struggle, right? Like, well, I struggled, but I find a way. But I was desperate, because I was at that point got nothing else, you know. So it was yeah. I managed to get
You found an oncologist. I mean, you probably paid an arm or a leg for that therapy, because us, we do it here as low dose chemotherapy or IPT. So that's
that
how
would be
we
even
kind of
better.
administer it.
I couldn't get that either. So here it's full dose or no dose. You know, they don't do insulin's potentiated therapies here. Like they're just so behind on everything. So I had to take the full doses for her, which of course knocked the crap out of her, but she survived that. And at that point we had weeks, so I just went both sides of the, you know, metabolic and chemo and diet and everything else. And so far, I never want to say, because I know that, you know, in any moment it could rear its head. But what I do now, I have this wonderful doctor, actually, I'd love to introduce you guys to her. Maybe you can get her on. Her name's Dr. Elizabeth Yurth, and she's at the Boulder Longevity Institute in Colorado. I don't know if any of you guys know, but she's wonderful. So she's mum's top doctor, if you like. She's and if she says jump, I ask how high, basically. And she's been able to really help me. And she's very much on our side of the
what was her name?
Way of thinking. Dr. Elizabeth
Yurth. I know her. So we met each other in the Seeds peptide conferences. So she's a very highly credible doctor who uses a lot of off-label drugs and also peptide therapies. But yeah, real top notch, really intelligent doctor. So you're in good hands with her.
She's been my mentor and friend, and she's actually the scientific advisor for my biotech company as well. But she's the bomb. Like, she really is. has given me so much guidance, you know, and with mum. And when she's creative too, because I can't get peptides that easily, and we find ways, and we're struggling at the moment now that the FDA's come down. I can't get peptides out of the, because I was getting them from Limitless, you know, thanks to Jay Campbell and, you know, his work. I was getting them out of Limitless, but now Limitless has stopped their crypto payments, and that was our only option to pay. So I'm still trying to find a way, if anybody knows any other good reputable places where I can get peptides and get them sent down, because I'm struggling to get those at the moment. And things like thymosin alpha-1 were really key for her because her immune system's so shot. You know, and at the moment I can't get them. So if anyone's
You know
got
where
any
where
ideas,
you know where to get it? Here in the
no,
Philippines. Everything that is
really?
banned in the US, everything's open here. So they're having a
Oh,
field day here
Melvin.
in terms of
Okay,
peptide. I'm
okay,
doing
can
my own
you
shopping
direct
too.
me? Okay, okay. Would you be able to help me out if we take this offline and maybe connect and
Yeah,
talk?
I'm using peptides. So I see patients here in the Philippines, and I'm prescribing
Yeah.
peptides to them here, like freely. I mean, the ones that I can't use there in the States.
Wow.
So
Okay.
here they have an open. I mean, I hope as long as they can last, and I hope the government doesn't do it the same as
Mm,
what they did to us there in the U.S. But again,
yeah.
it's a field day here so far. That's why,
Okay.
yeah, thymosin alpha-1, it's on the shelves here.
Okay. So maybe we can connect after, and I can get a consult with you, a proper consult with you for mum, and then maybe
Sure.
we can work away because I
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to access those.
That's
Yeah,
why
I
you're
need to
not
find a
coming
way.
home, Melvin.
I think it'd have to be
What?
person. I
Is that
think it'd
why
have to
you're
be
not coming
person,
home?
person to person, right?
What?
You,
You've been going a
you
I think
might
it
long
be
would
able to
have to
send
be
them.
person to person, I think would be the best way to mail it rather than
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about the mailing part. I don't know how New Zealand, I guess, checks their.
I have no trouble when it comes here. I can usually get it in. It's just getting them to ship them. I can't get Limitless to actually ship them because we can't pay for them on their at the moment, at least we can't pay on their credit card system. Like they don't. It's just a technical thing that I
Dr.
can't
Bill
get
will
them out
help
of
you.
limit.
He's good friends with
Yeah,
Jay.
I have
Oh yeah.
we have a few ways to get around that. So
Well,
amen.
we'll work on that one because I need to get mum a
keep
few things.
recording that.
No, we better shut that one off. But Melvin, we'll connect afterwards anyway because I'd love to,
Could you
yeah,
just
see.
see Melvin or Lisa talk about the RGCC test? Some of us might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, Melvin, go for it.
Oh, do you want to know what that is?
Yeah, I mean I know what it
Yeah,
is.
so the RGCC test is a genetic test for cancer patients, and it actually analyzes, number one, the circulating tumor cell count or the cancer cells that are swimming in your blood, which is the more significant finding in cancer because that's the one that's responsible for metastatic spread. And even though we see a solid tumor on the breast, that's really not your enemy. The real enemy is the one that's swimming around trying to reach the
Yeah.
brain, the liver, and all the other organs. So another thing that is provided by the test is the specific chemo drugs that will be good for the specific cancer of your patient. So everything is basically individualized, and they actually put those medicines on your blood sample that contains your cancer cells. And as Lisa mentioned also, it provides specific natural therapies that will be effective for your cancer. So this section of the test actually helps patients budget their money in relation to, cancer patients. They come in our doors with basketfuls of supplements, thinking that everything on the shelf would help their cancer. But if you think about it, these are thousands of dollars wasted if you don't know what you're trying to hit. So RGCC brings that to the table, meaning it will actually show you what specific supplements will work best for the cancer. And also hormonal therapies, also monoclonal antibody therapies. And it's still expanding as we speak. And right now, you can even request for a substance that you want to be tested for your cancer, but you need to send that sample along with your blood. And that's why I think it's going to be getting bigger in the future. But right now, this is one of the best things that we have used in cancer. And one of the better ones right now, maybe Lisa, I don't know if you still have use for this, is SOT. It's the
No, I haven't
superior
heard that.
oligonucleotide therapy. So it's they call it the cancer vaccine, but I don't want to use that term. But it runs after the messenger RNA of the cancer cell, and it stops it on its tracks, meaning stops proliferation, spread, and even promotes apoptosis or breakdown of that cancer cell. So it's administered through intravenous, and it's not like going through IPT. And right now, it's producing 77% good response to any type of cancer, according to their initial studies. And that's a preliminary study of RGCC. And as we use it in our cancer center as well, we're getting the same results. So something to look forward in the horizon for cancer therapy, and even a more practical way. Because as you said, you're going to pay an arm or a leg for chemotherapy, but this is definitely cheaper and more affordable for patients. So something to look forward for in relation to this company.
Okay, I need to maybe, or you need to come on my show anyway. We talk about it all. There's others too, like Main Track. Have you come across Main Track and Grail? What's your take on those?
Grail, yes, I've used Grail. So Grail is using methylation in relation to the finding of it's a yes or no result, and they find not all cancers, but the majority of cancer, especially hard to find ones like gastric cancer, also in pancreatic and liver, which is just more of a yes or no if you have this cancer or not. And it's more of an on the spot, real time, what's going on with your system. It's not comparable to RGCC that offers you specific therapies. It's really just somebody who wants to know if they have cancer or not. But it doesn't trump you not doing your preventative testing in relation to your colonoscopies, mammograms. But they always have that disclaimer that it's not going to be an end all to tell you if you have the real cancer right now and just shrug off the preventative measures that people do. So, but it's helpful. I've used it on patients before. It's just a little pricier here in the States when you do that.
And the Main Track, have you come across that one as well? Main Track is another testing.
Not yet. I've only used a lot of Grail and RGCC testing, but hopefully that comes into part of the options as well.
Yeah, because I've heard that one's even better than RGCC.
It sounds like that RGCC test you could use for just about anybody, not just cancers, right? If you're telling me it's telling you about something.
Yes, so they that's right. They even they create those little vaccines that I tell you about for Epstein-Barr virus, Lyme disease, even the chronic infections, CMVs, EBVs. So they're expanding. That's why this technology of SOT, or the messenger RNA antisense, as they call it, is starting to get through a lot of these chronic illnesses that's very hard to treat. And we have a section in our cancer center, which is actually on Dr. Fong's end, that they're trying to use this on Lyme patients. And that's how we're trying to see how this SOT is going to be encompassing so many different diseases, and it will help so many people in the end.
Wow.
In a cheap way, too, in a cheaper way.
I'll have to look into that one, because I'm working with a lot of cancer patients. I'm always looking for doctors and, things and tests and things to help. So I just connect people and connect the dots and help them work out the day-to-day stuff. But
well, Lisa, just a segue. So I try to be athletic, probably not as athletic as you. I don't think my simple vitamin C and vitamin D would be enough for your marathons and your extreme sports experience. So what are your tips for us for supplementation, peptide enhancement? I don't know what your trick of the trade is. What can you share to us about that?
For in an athletic sense, what would I recommend? Are you meaning?
And how much salt, how much potassium, magnesium, that type of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When I was, because I'm retired now, right, from doing the long stuff, and I do a lot of muscle building stuff now, because I know, muscles are the currency of longevity and not running 200 Ks at a time is not going to be conducive to health at all. So I've learned my lessons there, and I've done a lot of damage to myself because I did a lot of things that I didn't know better, and rhabdomyolysis and things like that were a regular thing in my life. So I'm trying to undo a lot of the damages. I think, it's really important that you have good electrolytes. Like I had a tetany seizure at one point from a potassium that was so low. I think potassium's an easy one for a lot of people are dealing with a potassium deficiency, even if it's not an overt deficiency. And I'd like to see electrolyte drinks with higher levels of potassium in them. As far as antioxidants, the old, should you have antioxidants if you're doing sport? And I think it really depends on how much sport. Like when you're overwhelming your system like I did, then you need a hell of a lot of antioxidant support. And then there's also the genetic component of it. I have a genetic basis where I have very poor detox, GST genes and things like that. So I need a lot of, what I like to do when I'm working with people is to do genetic testing, find out how to optimize for their particular genes, and then work what time of the day they should be training, what type of exercise they should be doing. We can tell all that from genetics now. So for me, when I did my genetic testing, and there's a couple of different programs that I use, and I can talk to that if you want, but doing the super long distance stuff was really not good for my genetics either. And that was one of the other reasons why I stopped doing it. I'm much more a short, sharp, high intensity type of person that should be training for about 3/4 of an hour per day, not more than that. So doing massive things like I was doing was causing huge inflammation. And just to give you an example, like my 9p21 gene is very poor, which means the inflammation on the endothelial lining when I overtrain is just way worse than an average person's. And so my family is much more prone to stroke and aneurysm because of that. So being an ultramarathon runner was not a good thing long-term for me. So that's one of the reasons I stopped doing that, right? So there's that nuance. And then I know what time of the day to train. Like I used to make my husband get up at 6 a.m. in the morning and do a CrossFit workout, and he put on weight and had cortisol problems and, wasn't getting any benefit because it was the wrong time of the day. That's when his regulation of his hormones were happening. His testosterone was replacing. And so when we shifted that to later on in the day, and then I stopped doing the CrossFit style of training for him because he should have been doing heavy weights. He can put heavier weights through his body than I can put through mine, but he should be having breaks between the sets rather than the back-to-back because his ATP doesn't replace as quickly as mine. So there's all that sort of nuance that we can tell from genetics now, which is really helpful for the athlete who's wanting to know what is actually suitable, what time of the day should I be doing mine, how intense, for how long, and, all of that sort of nuance to the conversation. And then I like to look at also, their person's blood panels and nutrient panels and things as well, if I'm trying to sort of help guide them. Not that I'm a exercise scientist either, but that's the approach that I come at it from when I'm looking to build a supplement stack. My basics are the basics that you would all do. Magnesium is deficient everywhere. Vitamin D, I believe, should be a part of, D3, K2. I'm a big fan of spermidine and vitamin C. I always have this dilemma with vitamin C and sulforaphane. They sort of don't mix because they sort of work on the same pathways, but they're two of my favorite supplements. So I just put them apart. But yeah, does that sort of answer your question, Melvin, or was there any specific that you were looking for?
No, that's good. I just wanted to, of course, there's a lot, some athletes here in the talk too, who definitely wants to know like your favorite stack or just your secret for success and how you do this. I'm sure the mental part is something that we can't all reach. You'll be surprised on how in the States, how they get themselves to a higher level of thinking through ketamine, some mushrooms. There's so many things out there using just to get, but it seems like you're doing this so natural. I mean, of course, a lot of training, years of training, but people need some help in terms of getting through the level of just that specific mindset that you have.
Yeah, I didn't have all of that knowledge back in the day, right, when I was actually competing. So I haven't competed for 5, 6 years. But now I use a lot of things. Yeah, like I'm on, I do a lot of mushrooms, as in, reishi and lion's mane and things like that. I'm a biohacker, like I'm trialing and testing things constantly. And trialing things out. I am a big fan for athletes or anybody over the age of 40, just basic creatine. And peptides have now only come on my radar in the last couple of years. And to be honest, I've been focused more on mum, and I can't afford it for myself and mum. So mum wins. I would love to try them all out on my own,
I forgot to ask
myself.
I forgot to ask you. It sounds like I'm guessing ketovore, not full carnivore.
No, I'm not carnivore, and with my genetics, I need quite a lot of meat. Yep, I need quite a lot of meat. I don't do strict keto. Part of it's I like food, and I should be a bit more disciplined than I am. But I do eat a ton of vegetables. So vegetables are in my. I believe that vegetables are very important. And for our microbiome and all of that sort of thing. So, I lean towards a low carb diet when I'm being good, right? And lots of vegetables and good supplementation and real food, whole food, and trying to avoid all the processed crap that comes along. And it's pretty hard, and organic when I can. That's sort of my and good fats. Big on the.
What about water? Are you into structured water, fourth phase water by any chance?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to. I haven't got a machine yet, but that's on the to-do list. Yeah, I do get good water. I get a special spring water that we have here, but yeah, it's definitely on the to-do list. It's working through all of these things. I mean, I'm a big fan of plasmalogens. Have you guys come across plasmalogens?
Yep,
for brains and ketones.
Yep.
Yeah. Dr. Diane Goodenow.
That was Diane Goodenow. Yeah. So
yeah,
we are using that here. He has new two types of those prodrome, right?
Yeah, prodrome, glia and neuro.
Neuro and glia.
Yeah, so I've used that in cancer as well now. Like he's brought out research around how that helps with cancer. So I've been looking at plasmalogens, the C15. You had Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson on. I just had her on the show as well. I'm using that now, and that makes sense to me. I haven't been on it long enough to say yay or nay. I've got Dr. Michael Lewis coming on the show too, high dose fish oils, because I'm really interested in anything brain rehabilitation. So Mum has high dose fish oils, plasmalogens, fatty 15 and ketones, red light therapy and hyperbaric, and her brain is absolutely amazing for what that brain has been through. Like, she's just incredible. I've seen her brain so many times go from no idea who I am, what I am, who she is, like even when she gets a UTI, she goes completely offline and then come back full capacity again. I mean, well, she's got memory issues now, but compared to what she's been through, the stuff I'm putting in is working, put it that way, because she should have been complete vegetable by now with what she's experienced. And she's still, if you sat and had a coffee with her, you wouldn't know she's got any problems. One of the main problems I do have with Mum is normotensive hydrocephalus. And has anyone got any ideas for that besides surgery? Because I'm seeing the neurosurgeon. But that's high risk and high, how do you get water out of the brain without operating?
Well, I can analema. You ain't going to be able to see
What's that?
Analema. ANALEMMA. I'm not sure where they're from. They created a glass water tube.
They're from France.
Yeah, okay, France. So you stir your water.
Yep.
I think it's one of the cheapest ways rather than using a vortex machine or using one of those big machines, you know, 3 to 6 thousand, $7,000. But I think it's one of the best ways. And you could feel it. You could feel it when you're stirring the water. I kid you not. You go 30 to
Wow.
60, 90 seconds, and I believe it's a fourth stage type water. Even if it's a little
Uh-huh.
bit, it's better than nothing. And I think it's
Yep.
absolutely huge for our hydration.
Okay. I'll have a look into that one.
I
And
don't,
yeah,
Thank you,
you found it
Marlene.
good?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would be, strong enough, but natural progesterone, 200 to 400 milligrams a night is actually a natural diuretic. And I just wrote a paper on glaucoma, and actually that's actually one of the sort of the alternative medicine treatments for glaucoma, is because it sort of dehydrates the intraocular
Wow.
fluid. So it's a thought.
Wow.
I'll
Okay.
I'll go
I've,
I'll go I'll go research it myself, but there's a thought there. Okay. And we do use,
okay, because
as you know, we
yeah.
use intravenous progesterone in acute traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've had her on 200, and I've just been cycling her off it. What's your thoughts on cycling 10 days off a month on the progesterone,
well,
or not
I'm not,
necessary?
Felice Gersh likes doing that. But most of my patients, when they find out that when you do that, they're going to start having periods again when they're in their 60s and 70s, aren't too keen on that. So, it's I don't have that much experience with it to give you a yay or a nay. But most of the patients,
It's just from the receptor, like, are we down regulating the receptors of the progesterone receptors by doing it all the time? That's the thought, isn't it? To try to cycle out of it and
right,
back onto it.
yeah.
But
No.
there's actually a study just going back to the normal tensive hydrocephalus, prostaglandin FA2, that was done, unfortunately, just in rats, where they were able to get the lymphangions, the lymph that actually helps the lymph get out of the brain. They used prostaglandin FA2 to do that, which was successful in the mouse study. But no, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that gonna do something else in a human? So, I've had her on 200. I might even go higher with the progesterone and see. There's no downsides to progesterone going higher.
Mostly fatigue, some
Right.
GI bloating sometimes, but mostly fatigue. Okay.
Right, but nothing
Kind of the end.
wild.
So
Right.
Have you heard of
Well,
Veda Austin by any chance?
Veda,
Veda Austin, VE
no.
AUSTIN. She was one of the first people. She started to copy that Japanese doctor who started to show the sequences in water, and some of them that were frozen in comparison to angry music,
Oh yeah. Yep.
music.
I heard of that.
She does the same thing, and she's created just the most massive. She uses petri dishes, and she'll speak to the water, and it will produce a heart. It will produce a violin. It will produce. It's absolutely insane. If you can get her on your show, you'd be blown away.
Okay. Wow. All right. I'll have a look at. I'm getting lots of ideas and lots of work ahead of me for this group. It's quite exciting. I've
If I
got
were
the
a
next 6
research
years
group,
planned.
right? I blame it on John.
Oh no, you guys are absolutely fabulous. I'm going to go and have to pick up my mummy shortly, guys. So my brothers have got her, and I've got to pick her up in about 20 minutes. But I just wanted to say I'm very, very honored.
we are honored. You are amazing.
No, you guys are amazing. So
story, amazing. And one of the problems with not your story yourself is that when others that are in your situation, you need somebody as dedicated as you are to see it, see through, to get past the doctors, to stick with mom, to make sure things get done. And it's as you know, it's not easy to do. And someone who's run up and down the Himalayan mountains, maybe it's a little bit easier. Just put one foot. It's
wow, it's pretty tough. So like it's tough because I can speak freely and openly with you guys, but when you go into the hospital and they treat you like an idiot and that knows nothing, and that's really tough, right? Not to
anybody that's been on this call, and even those of us with medical degrees have also been in hospitals and been treated like idiots. So
true that.
And think about this: the VA hospital. I believe don't quote me on how many, but they have the most hospitals in the world.
Wow.
And I don't know, about a fourth of them are research hospitals, but they're backed by big pharma.
Oh,
and
wow.
I know you and Dr. Clearfield had an excellent podcast, and he told you a little bit about my story and things that are going on at the VA. And you think you had some problems with your father. It's the same thing at the VA. It really is. Yep. It's brutal.
I've heard that over and over again about the VA, to be honest, like from other sources.
They're trying though. They're trying.
They don't laugh us out the front door anymore. Like when we first.
No. Well, you got
that.
Just like Dr. Nerio was saying, you literally have some doctors that will sneak in to intensive care and do a couple little treatments. And if you sign that little waiver, I think it was, and I'm not getting political, I think it was Trump who created that. If you want to do experimental stuff, you could do experimental. Wow. So I know you got to get, I can go on and on.
No, but that's so important though. That's what we need here. Some, like my GP
Dr. Clearfield rubs off on you,
Yeah, he does. That's why I like him.
I think it's the other way around. So an unbelievable
so does Dr. Burgess.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing.
It's wonderful. And please reach out to me individually. I'm very keen to connect with you all individually. And I'd love to share my books or my docos with you or whatever. And we'll stay friends, I hope,
Absolutely.
For sure.
So just let everyone know, next week we have Heather Hallis. We ran into her during the homeopathic, the Canadian Homeopathic Conference, and she's going to be giving us some insights and wisdom on some weight control products and weight control technique tips and tricks. So that'll be next week.
Let's not forget about homeopathics too. Homeopathic medicine. I don't know how that is in New Zealand, but hopefully you can come back and talk with Dr. Nerio and Dr. Clearfield about what we've got going on between Nevada and Arizona. We're one of the few states in America that does homeopathics or have medical boards and so forth. And Dr. Nerio is pretty big in that arena. And so that's natural stuff that you could use over there.
Yeah.
Some of us took and passed the certifying test 3 months ago and still haven't seen our certificate yet. Dr. Nair.
I'll get on it when I get back.
And one last November 3rd at Age Management Medical Group in Salt Lake City, I will be speaking on longevity. I can't even say it. And we're going to talk about the rapamycin, autophagy, and mTOR. So that's going to be my
brilliant
so Ross Pelton kind of pushed me into that direction. So
yeah, he's awesome. I've had him on too. He's great. Hey, one final thing before I do go. Our first longevity group over here meeting is on the 27th of September, which is your 26th. I'll send to Bill the details. I'd love you all to join.
I'll send it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's.
And we have a gastroenterologist who's going to be sharing about irritable bowel as a presentation, but it's the first inaugural, meeting. So I'd love you guys to turn up because then I'll look really good. I'll look like I'm really important. I've got all these amazing international docs.
You got to send them back our way too then. So
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll connect our groups, and then that'll be really great. So yeah, I'll send you the details and all of that good
Again,
stuff.
I want to thank all of our friends from the Philippines for being here every week. They've been with us now for about 6 or 7 weeks. That was Dr. Nario's doing also. And so we're glad to have you with us. And you'll have to let us know about that conference that you were the keynote speaker for sometime. So, okay. Lisa, I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much. We always like a brief wrap up. If you have a, like I said, my son was in theater for 20 years, and we always like to have him leaving the theater, singing the lead song. So what's the lead song?
Oh, hey, I just once again thank you for welcoming me with open arms, for putting up with the technical stuff, and I feel like you're part of my new family now, and I would love you to come and check out the group and my podcast and reach out to me and all of that sort of good stuff. So
just get me the times, the dates, and a link, and we will be there.
Wonderful. Thanks, team.
Okay. All right, everybody.
We'll see you next week.
Questions and comments. John, how things at the medical school?
Everything's are so good, it's scary. So we'll keep talking and get this research group going.
Okay.
And Lisa is so beautiful. I'm sure we're going to work out something with New Zealand and the Philippines.
Woohoo!
That's right. So, they don't want
sounds wonderful.
We'll just have to go elsewhere. That's all. So that's fine.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much again, Lisa. Please go take care of your mother, and God bless her. God bless you. Everybody, thank you for being here. We had a pretty good retention for, we're at almost 2 hours. So, okay, we'll see you next week. Same time, same station. We got Heather Hallis coming. We're going to learn about some homeopathic remedies for weight control and whatever else she wants to share with us. So we'll see you then. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Wonderful.
I will send you the video, Lisa, when it's ready. And we'll send you also the emails for everybody that was on here. Also, we'll send you that. Okay.
Perfect.